was just like you. I got tired of looking at the TV and picking up the radio or picking up the newspaper and seeing about all the corrupt officials and seeing about all the corruption we have. And when that corruption reached its dirty hand into the judiciary, I said enough. And I knew that that's not what El Paso's about. El Paso's proud people. And we don't put up with that kind of corruption. That's not what we're about. So I went to the governor's office. There was an opening in the judiciary. And when there's an opening in the state judiciary, the governor appoints someone to fill that position. I went to the governor and I said, Governor, let me stand up for the proud people of El Paso because we are proud. And we're honest and hard-working people. Let me stand up for that honesty and integrity. Let me run a campaign about honesty and integrity. And that's what I'm doing. I've been the judge of the 243rd for over about a year and a half now. I stand on the ballot in November. My opponent has 2 judicial ethics complaints against him and a harassment lawsuit. That's what the Democrats have. That's what they're putting up against somebody who runs a campaign on honesty and integrity. There's not a single Republican office holder who has been indicted for corruption. Think about that. Support your Republican candidates. Support Barbara Carrasco. Support Dan Chavez. Thank you.
2.5 years ago, I stood before you, and I asked one question. Is education the center of everything we need? And if it is, then shouldn't we focus more on it? And then at the same time, improve on what's currently happening. What do we have? Think about it a second. Since I took office, Isleta has been under a big umbrella of the word we use over and over again today, corruption. I broke that story. What do we have now? Over $587,000 in waste, fraud, and abuse by a superintendent who uses your tax dollars as his personal piggy bank because he wants to have a band. And more importantly, because he believes that he can play music in that band because it's something he likes to do. Here's a better question. Don't we have an inherent responsibility to look at what kids need to do? 2 years ago, when I first took office, the first actual debate we got into was where Democrats wanted to remove teachers out of what's called the teach review process. What that means in English is they said teachers aren't qualified to tell students what they need to know. Of course they are. They're professionals. And the state board appoints those teachers, but they fought to remove them. And they said only a person with a PhD is qualified to do that. Are you kidding me? If you look at the census numbers, what do you find? You find that less than 1% of all El Pasoans have a PhD, which means El Pasoans aren't qualified to do diddly. That's what the Democrats said. And I tell you right now, this room is more than capable of providing input to the state board and more than capable of increasing student performance. And those are the kind of things that we have to do. When I took that office, I thought I had a 4-year term. But the House said, you know what, we're going to redistrict you a little bit and change things around. And they cut the term down to 2 years. So unfortunately, here I am again, in front. I met Dan at that time 2 years ago. And Dan and I talked about a lot of things, about a lot of visions that made El Paso important, and more importantly, made Texas competitive as a more economic and stronger state. And one thing Dan and I agreed on unequivocally was education. Because both Dan and I grew up with nothing. And we learned through education, you have opportunity. Through education, you have the ability to influence other people. And through education, you have one thing that no one can take from you. And that is the ability to articulate positions.
We got to go to another meeting.
It doesn't take any talent to go in there and go, the D button is square on a machine and press it. Think about it. Back in the 1960s, we taught apes how to press a button. in order to fly a spaceship. In effect, what do we have now? The same exact thing. And notice almost every single banner says one thing: vote for Democrat. Not a single qualification of what they stand for. Not a single reason why to vote for them other than they have a D next to them. And us, oh my goodness, we have the scarlet R on our chests. And why? Because we believe in the Constitution. We believe in American exceptionalism. We believe that America can be better, stronger, and more importantly, we believe that our children, if given the right education, can make both Texas and America great. Help me and Dan make our children the best, to where we don't have to cow down to China or any other country because we're second best. When I grew up, we were a proud American people. Now we're divided, but we're divided over the wrong things. We're divided over not right and wrong, but over ideology. But think about it. My mom always said, mijito, para usted lo que quieras, pero trabajo por él. What does that mean? We have to work for what we want. But yet the Democrats say, dame, 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 dame. And who does that? We do. We don't donate our money, they take it from us. Remember 3 years ago? When they said, we're going to lower your taxes, property taxes. And they came down. The very next day, the county said, well, you know what? We need more money for trash. We need more money for this, more money for that. And they nickeled and dimed us to death until we now pay more property tax in 3 years. And what do they say now? We need a new civic center. Do we? Really? Okay. Do we need more softball fields to play softball? You know what we need? We need an economy with jobs. We need a people that is proud again. What we need is children willing to work hard because they believe in the fundamentals that made this country great. You owe it to only one individual, and that is to your children and to your grandchildren. And ask yourself this question: where do you want them to be? And how are you going to help them get there? I say to you today and now that it begins with the Bill Hickses, the Barbaras, the Dans, and myself. Because this battle is going to be a tough one. Not because we're wrong, but because the dame mentality and the pobre mijito mentality. You know what? I may have been pobre, and I was called mijito by my mom often enough, but never a pobre mijito combined. Okay? The reality is, mijito is an endearment. Nothing wrong with that. But we're pobre because we choose that. And ask yourself this question: if in fact the Democrat Party is as good as they advocate it is, why is El Paso one of the poorest, largest cities in Texas after they voted the same way for so long? At a certain point, he's mom again, se prende el foco, and you gotta say, oye, algo falta. When is that point going to be?
November.
Folks, the time is now, and the time is here. And we have to help them prender el foco o cambiarlo, whichever one's appropriate. Thank you very much for your time.
Southern gentleman is spent time in Boston. He's a venture capitalist, and I don't have my time to get on, but I'm talking about Mr. Dan Rowe. And he has more accomplishments than he is to take a stick up. And, you know, that always can just show you what kind of man he is. And he's done lots of different things. He has BS in a bachelor's in accounting and MBA from the University of South Carolina. And he even brought jobs to El Paso, which is probably, you know, Jose Rodriguez probably can't say that, I can't. And In fact, he brought the parents of one of my good friends to El Paso, and I had no idea about that. And yeah, he's a really, he's done everything you can think of. He's been very active in the financial sector, especially here in town. He's on the board of directors for Goodwill, and he is currently working with the house home builders. And he's been married for 50 years. And I don't know anything about that, obviously, because I'm a little young. But, you know, if you're married for 50 years, you know he's a stand-up guy. And I mean, not only is he exceptional, I mean, his daughters have, they all have their master's degrees and CPAs. One is a vice president for Fruit of the Loom. The other is vice president of Schweppes Beverages, which is Dr. Pepper, Snapple, etc. And the youngest is a comptroller on her way to being vice president. So, you know, let's give a hand for Mr. Rowe and just an exceptional man.
Good evening. I do have a lot of really factors and moving plants from New Jersey out here. So I have an extensive amount of experience. The reason for that is I'm old. You know, if you get old and you don't have experience, well, that's where you go. I was very interested and I want to talk and raise my hand during everybody's speech. Education, yeah, I love that, and I love well, let me tell you a little, digress from what I originally was going to say. But I'm on the phone, and I bank with all over the country. Wells Fargo, Compass, all the different banks, and I talk with them. And we're good friends, because we've been friends for 20 years. And one of them said, "Oh, you're down in El Paso." I said, "Yeah, how's it well?"